Good afternoon, Sairam. Today's topic of the discussion or the lecture is on the growth of the pollen tube through the stylar tissue into the ovary. Pollen grain landing, pollination mechanism, pollen tube formation, stigma style interaction, recognition of the pollen grain, adhesion of the pollen grain to the stigmatic surface are all not discussed. Pollen tube formation, initiation of the pollen tube formation is also not discussed. How the stylar tissue is able to guide the pollen tube through itself to the septum, and from the septum to the funiculus, and from the funiculus to the micropyle, and then entering into the synergid. What happens inside the synergid will be discussed. Pollen grain, mind you, a brief introduction is that pollen grain, being a male gametophytic tissue, is released in a nicely packed condition and it is temperature sensitive. It has got a exine and intine, exine protecting it. It has got a two cell inside, a vegetative cell, or it is also called as a tube cell, having a tube nucleus, and a generative cell with two male gametes, which will be formed from the generative cell. In the case of the monocot, it is a three cellular condition where there is a tube nucleus and two male gametes are already being formed when it is shed. Whereas in the case of many of the dicot, it is two-celled condition, and during the pollen tube germination, the two male gametes are formed. Mind you, the male gametes are non-motile over here. So they have to be physically carried by the cytoplasmic action towards the micropyle. As the pollen grain lands and starts germination after necessary conditions of the recognition, etc. takes place, it has to pass through the sporophytic tissue. Mind you, pollen grain being a gametophyte and all other tissue like stigma, style, the septum, the funiculus, up to the entrance point of the micropyle, they are all sporophytic tissue. And all the chemicals involved or all the necessary part of the affecting involved are all present in micromolar condition. Two very important point is that there are two types of pollen grain as far as the starch is concerned, a starchy pollen and non-starchy pollen. And similarly, we have got two types of pistil, that is the style, where there is a hollow style and a solid style. In hollow style, the pollen tube actually glides on the inner part of it, in the hollow part, and then reaches the micropolar region, whereas in the case of the solid side, it has to pass through the intercellular space of the stylar tissue. The stylar tissue, if you take a transverse section of any style, you will find that there is epidermal cell, epidermal layer, followed by 2 or 3 or 4 layers of parenchyma cells having the chloroplast. It may even contain large amount of starch, and then the basic transmitting tissue starts. Basic transmitting tissue, if you take an LS, it will be slightly longitudinal, placed one over the other. Okay, we continue further regarding the growth of the pollen tube through the stylar tissue. There are leucine rich repeat receptor like kinase called LEPK1. Reduction in these will not allow the pollen tube to grow. They are inbuilt within the area above the transmitting tract and below the stigma. This is like a boundary. Even if the pollen of, say, a non-compatible or any other species do germinate, it is here they will be stopped. That means at every checkpoint, we have to have a regulation, and because of that regulation, the further growth of the pollen tube takes place. Between the stigma and transmitting tissue, there is also another aspect that is called as auxin response factor. ARF1 and ARF2. They regulate the growth in that particular tract, and they are also present during the development of the pistil. And they are the one who really give the direction at that particular point. Because this gap region between the stigma and the transmitting tissue, the pollen tube can go anywhere else or it can stop. But these 2 points, they regulate it. And once they enter the transmitting tract, then there is a smooth flow. But here also there are proteins like arabinogalactone. This arabinogalactone is a signaling factor and helps in the pollen tube, inside the pollen tube. It is secreted by the pistil and it enters into the pollen tube and regulates the signaling and trafficking part. You will ask, what is the signaling part? Signaling part is towards the growth of the pollen tube towards the ovule, and trafficking part is the vesicles. When the pollen tube actually grows, there are a lot of vesicular supply takes place. This arabinogalacton is present in the style, and as the pollen tube grows further towards the ovule side, it will immediately enter into the pollen tube and help in the trafficking of those vesicles. These vesicles contain the calcium and membrane forming chemicals as well as lipid molecules and also the pectin. So it will be depositing just near about the tip. The tip is opaque. If you stain with the aniline blue, you can find out in fluorescence microscopy, the tip is opaque. Just above the tip, it will be depositing. And you can literally see the vesicles moving up there. Even in a high magnifying microscope of 1500 oil immersion lens in the fluorescence microscopy, you can literally see small tiny particle moving up and depositing it over there and coming back. These are very simple thing to study. And cyclosis movement takes place. And cytoplasm will go there, deposit that, and again you can see the movement. And then maybe some small vacuolated substance also coming up along with it. This arabinogalacton can be inhibited by phenyl glucosides. So there is a suppression for that. Phenyl glucosides are present to prevent the signaling system from not functioning if there is a incompatible pollen grain coming up. So to prevent that, arabinogalactons will be secreted from the transmitting tissue and it is not inbuilt within the pollen tube. There is also a transmitting tract specific glycoprotein. These are called as TTS1 and TTS2, localized in the transmitting tract only. It will not be coming from out nearer the transmitting tract and coming up to the transmitting tract, then going into the pollen tube. They stimulate the pollen tube growth towards the ovule. They give a direction. This is transmitting tract specific glycoprotein. There is an increasing gradation over there, and this increasing gradation is made possible by glycosylation. If we don't get the glycosylation possible, as the pollen tube comes towards it and as the pollen tube grows down, the glycosylation will take place and these specific proteins will be guiding it towards the ovule. So to summarize this particular part, we have got a leucine rich repeat receptors, and we have also got auxin response factors, arabinogalactons, transmitting tract glycoprotein and its glycosylation. Therefore, if these four factors have to work together to cross over the barrier between the stigma and the transmitting tract, and from the transmitting tract to further down. Another important part of the entire stylar tissue is presence of GABA. GABA is an unusual amino acid known as gamma aminobutyric acid. Gamma aminobutyric acid, shortly called as GABA. As the development of pistil takes place during the flower development, GABA get deposited throughout the stylar tract up to the ovule, and they are in uniform concentration. If they are in high concentration, no pollen tube will grow. If they are in high concentration, no pollen tube will ever grow into that. So as soon as the pollen tube starts from the stigmatic tissue going in between the stigmatic and the transmitting tract, at that particular point of time, there is another, we can call it as an enzyme called as POP, pollen on pistil 1. This pollen on pistil 1 factor will start to degrade the GABA in such a manner that there is a gradient. Lesser the GABA, the direction of the pollen tube is towards the ovule. As the pollen tube migrates further and further, GABA will becoming slowly getting digested by the help of pollen on pistil. This pollen on pistil 2 factor 1 and factor 2 are present throughout. In fact, GABA is the maximum in the ovule, especially in the outer integument. GABA is actually a overall checking part for the pollen tube. See, plant does not want a weak male gamete or a pollen grain which is non-compatible or non-worthy to germinate and go ahead with that formation of a seed. The plant wants a good seed and a good fruit. It is as simple as that. It doesn't tolerate any weak seedlings or weak conditions. We don't want weak seeds. So we want a strong seed. So this GABA is present over there to regulate the pollen tube and give a direction. Mind you, it is not only one pollen tube which is going to germinate. If you take the pollen of or the stigma of the stylar region of the maize, there are hundreds of pollen grain going to germinate for one single ovule. There is a paper where they have a pollen ovule ratio is there. At least there will be a minimum of 20 pollen tube competing for a single ovule. So imagine the amount of response which should be given by the stylar tissue and the energy process. The inbuilt pollen tube will have a small amount of energy, but how long it can support? There has to be outside portion. That is, stylar tissue has to provide the energy towards it. So the rate of respiration is also quite high. Earlier we have seen in our studies that when the flower opens, actually the amount of proline as well as the amount of serine increases. There is an enhanced level of presence of proline amino acid as well as that of serine. The role of proline can be to prevent some sort of stress, because flowers will be under stress when the temperature rises. If the temperature is around, say, 30 degree, 35 to 38 degree, I don't think any pollination will be successful at that time. Of course, there are exceptions like Calotropis, etc., where the stylar tissue is well protected by the corona and it acts like some sort of a coolant chamber. Our studies have shown that temperature outside may be 42, but in that particular, inside the portion, there is a hollow chamber through which the two style pass. The phi corona of the Calotropis flower forms a pollen chamber. Forms a staminal column, and inside the staminal column you will find the cooler temperature. So as a result of that, the pollen tube can enter nicely. Mind you, Calotropis is having a pollinia, and 50% of the pollinia are sterile, 50% is fertile. And pollination occurs around 10 o'clock. If you observe carefully the Calotropis flower, the bumblebees and other bees come over there and they do at the time of, say, 10 o'clock. And initial response of the pollinia to grow and form the pollen tube is about half an hour. It's not immediate. In vitro studies have shown that. And the amount of the sucrose present on the gynostagium should be around 12 to 15%. If you take the what you call as the chromatography and perform this for sucrose, you will find out the quantity of the sucrose is quite high. Therefore, there are plants which need a very high percentage of sucrose and plant also very low percentage of sucrose. For example, in Eichhornia crespis, the pollen grain will germinate even at 1% or 2%. Very less amount of sucrose is needed. But in case of Calotropis, 15% is needed. So there is a difference. That means within the system also you need a gradient of the sucrose present according to the number of pollen tube which is competing for it. So a lot of factors go into that. If there is no proper supply of the energy there, pollen tube will stop, because how long the internal energy of the pollen tube itself can sustain it. So there has to be an external support source coming from the stylar tissue. If you take a transverse section of any stylar tissue and stain with iodine, you can find there is plenty of starch around it. And as the pollen tube passes, the starch gets degraded. So starch gives the energy to sustain the growth. And this particular starch, which will get digested and form the sucrose. And that sucrose, after entering inside, there will be a boron. Boron is essential at the here only. Boron will form a sugar borate complex. And that sugar borate complex will take it to a level for where the oxidation takes place and release that particular sucrose molecule. Sucrose will then get converted to glucose and the energy will be released through the respiratory process. So there is a high rate of respiration also occurring within the pollen tube. And to support that many number of pollen tube, you need a high source of energy coming from the stylar tissue. So role of stylar tissue is enormous. It is not just only guiding or giving signals or trafficking, signaling, etc., but also to supply amount of energy. So there has to be inbuilt starch present over there in the stylar tissue. A simple experiment can demonstrate the role of starch. You have an intact style in the morning, you stain it, you will find the entire will be full of starch. After half an hour after pollination, you will find half of the style, there will not be any starch, the lower portion will having the starch. That shows that the tube has come up to half of the style. And growth in vitro is slower as compared to that in vivo. Just imagine Punica granatum. our dalim plant, how many seeds are there? For each and every seed you require one pollen tube. That means how much competition must be occurring for one single ovule? There will be at least minimum 20 pollen tube for a single ovule to come. Therefore, quantity of the energy has to be enormous supply at that particular level. And mind you, the growth space is also less. It is not a big space. Stylar tissue, if you take a transverse section, it is not a big space. It's a small space there. You have a epidermal cell layer, then comes some sort of cortex part, like where we sometimes do have some chloroplast having starch being formed over there and then the transmitting tract comes. The transmitting tract is not much. Maybe at the maximum we can see under microscope, low power microscope, we can see and calculate about maybe 1000 micron. Beyond that it is not. In some cases it is still less. So in that small confined space, so many pollen tube has to grow. So many factors play into the role of the pollen tube growth. And when competition comes, it is very tough. Only tough gets going. Next part will come. In the last part of that journey of the pollen tube, up to the funiculus, all the factors which is there right throughout the pistil acts. But once it reaches the funiculus, once it has reached the funiculus, now the entrance has to go into the micropyle. Septa, funiculus, micropyle. Before that, when it is about to enter the micropyle, I would like to add about the role of serine. Serine is another amino acid which is important, and at the point of the near the tip region of the growth throughout the pistil, you will find the serine concentration. Serine will activate the glutamate receptors, serine glutamate receptors on the pollen tube, and this will be just above the tip. Let us say the tip will occupy, let us say, about 4 to 5 microns. It will be above the tip, and once they get activated, the entry of the calcium molecule inside the cytoplasm of the pollen tube becomes easy, because calcium has to enter. Calcium influx has to take place to form the calcium pectide compound. Pectin is there synthesized inside the pollen tube, and that conjugates with that of the calcium. So calcium influx has to be there. There should be an oscillation of the calcium, and that is done with the help of the serine. Serine activates glutamate receptors on the pollen tube, and there is a flow of calcium inside. Any defect over there will be detrimental to the growth of the pollen tube. It is not going to grow. Now let us come up to the funiculus. It has come up to the funiculus. Let us take the tip of the pollen tube and the micropyle. Let us take it as, say, 50 micron. The distance is 50 micron, or say 10 micron. It has come up to 10 micron. Here again, the outer integument of the ovule is rich in GABA. As the pollen tube progresses towards the micropylar region, the GABA is going to degrade, and that is a signal which gives you the direction. Degradation of the GABA in that particular area will give the direction for the pollen tube towards the micropyle. At the micropyle, the things get slowed down, because we all know the structure of our embryo sac or the female gametophytic structure. We have egg cells clamped on both the sides by the synergid with filiform apparatus, plus we have the 3 antipodals, which we teach them as that we don't have any role for it, but they do have a role. When everything will fail at the top, that is the egg and other thing, these cells can also play a role, and they also give a very important signals. The bipolar nuclei, one from each pole, plays a vital role. It has to get fused. The bipolar nuclei has to be fused and become the secondary nucleus. When they fuse and become the secondary nucleus, there is a signal which is moving from that bipolar nuclei towards the synergid cell. Then the synergid cell and the filiform apparatus will become active and release a protein. This was discovered in Z maize, that is our makkah. Therefore, it is called as ZM protein, ZM1 protein. This protein is about 96 amino acid chain, a small polypeptide, and that will get itself moving towards the micropylar side from the synergid, and that attracts the pollen tube towards the micropyle and allows it enter inside the synergid. Once that entry takes place, the weakening of the pollen tube takes place there. Digestion of the pollen tube takes place and the release of the male gametes occur. At the same time, there is a synergid cell, filiform apparatus of the synergid. That filiform apparatus of the synergid also gives another protein called as MYB. And that MYB protein is synthesized just at the time when the pollen tube has to degrade inside the synergid cell. So here the bipolar nuclei and the filiform apparatus play a vital role to signal the Z-maze, that is ZM protein, 96 chain protein, amino acid chain protein. And once that comes, the fertilization or the entry of the pollen tube towards the what you call as the embryo sac gets completed, and then the fertilization of the female egg as well as the fertilization of the secondary nucleus takes place and it gets completed. If the secondary nucleus is not fusing, that is not being formed, the bipolar nucleus do not fuse and form the secondary nucleus, you are not going to get the fertilization done. In case of single ovule, it is very simple process. Whereas in the case of the multiple ovules present over there and many pollen tube entering, it goes near the about say 10 micron to 15 micron near the micropyle. Not all the ovules are going to develop at the same time. That is also a factor to be taken into account. Many, for example, in Z-maze, the lower portion of the ovule get fertilized first and then the upper one comes. So as and when they are having fusion product of the bipolar nuclei, that chemical will be released and pollen tube at the tip of the funiculus will be attracted towards it. So it is one by one, the ovule will be getting matured. In the case of the multiple ovule, and in the case of single ovule, the process is much simpler as compared to the multiple ovule. So in short, whatever I was able to present and whatever bit of work which I have done earlier part of my life, based on the ovule, what we used to take it out, I'll just give you some steps for the practicals to be done at the MSc level or at BSc level, whichever is possible. That you can do histochemical localization of many enzymes and many proteins, Kumasi blue staining of the membranes which can be done, hollow tubular growth can be studied, allow the pollination to take place, those for the hollow tube, and then after 2 hours you just dissect out carefully and see inside the see the central canal, and you can see number of pollen tube there. You can stain with green, methyl green as well as aniline blue combination and do the fluorescent microscopy. Today grants have come to all the colleges, fluorescent microscopy is purchased, you can do study with fluorescent microscopy. And also you can study without the fluorescent microscopy using methyl orange and methyl green combination. You can see the pollen tube. You can use KOH to your best experiment, like 1% KOH can be taken in a watch glass. You add the pistil and just gently warm it, wash it in distilled water, mount it and see after staining with aniline blue or methyl green. You can see the pollen tube over there. Plenty of other work like simple iodine solution for starch, degradation of the starch, passage through the stylar tissue over a period of time, that can be noted. Another important aspect is that the shorter the style, the faster the growth of the pollen tube and faster is the fertilization. In the case of the long style like that of the maize etc., it takes 48 hours to reach the ovule. Longest pollen tubes are seen in Z-maze. 48 hours to reach. That means if any micro environmental changes occur just next to that cob or next to the ovule, then it is very difficult for fertilization to take place. For example, a sudden rain, the temperature will fall down, or a sudden burst of wind, or a sudden burst of sunlight, sudden temperature increase during the October month or in the month of say April or beginning of the March. You will, in India I am talking in respect to, you will find that All these aspects, whatever I have discussed, are heat sensitive. They are not. The moment the temperature increases, pollen tube will stop the growth. There is nothing you can do about it. Therefore, growth of the pollen tube reaching up to the ovule, and then the micropolar action over there, attractant of that synergid cell, which I said ZM, Z-mase protein, are all very crucial. Nucleus fusion, secondary nucleus fusion is extremely crucial for the fertilization to occur. If the bipolar nuclei don't fuse, the fertilization will not take place. The ovule is there, the pollen tube has come up to the ovule, it will go near the synergid, it may even burst, but fertilization will not take place. So several factors, you can summarize the several factors which have been grown right from the time recognition of the pollen at the stigma level, and then further growth up to the micropyle. The exciting science of pollen grain has no ending. We don't know much about it yet. Hardly we can say 5% or 2% are understood. I have read papers where in rice there are more than 600 genes which are doing the work for the fertilization process. That is starting from the formation of the pollen grain in the anther till the end of it. So a fascinating branch of science is there. We have to develop various small techniques, microscopic techniques to study that, and your skill technique to dissect out the ovule. Simple experiment can be done. Dissect out the ovule, keep the ovule in one place, allow the pollen grain to germinate in vitro condition, and see whether the pollen tube goes towards that particular ovule. They are very simple. Pollinia is an excellent, Calotropis polliniana, an excellent material to study for a beginner to study the behavior of the pollen tube. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I hope I have given small amount of bit of information which I have gathered over a period of time. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.